How quickly did life go from normal to completely different? If you had a timeline, or was this a period of months, of weeks? What did that look like?
A millisecond. And, you go from being on a dream family vacation to the hospital, never having to put on swimsuits, and you hear a tumor in your child's brain, and he was 4 at the time.
Before we get into today's conversation, I want to take a second and explain why this one matters. Christy Brown has built a career at the highest levels of medical sales, leading teams, driving strategy, operating under pressure most people never experience. She understands performance. She understands outcomes. She understands what it takes to win. But that's not the story we're here to tell today. Today is about her son, Alexander, a young boy fighting pediatric brain cancer, and a family navigating something no parent is ever prepared for. But when life gets this real, it changes everything. How you define pressure, how you think about success. So this isn't just a conversation about a career. This is a conversation about perspective, about pain, and about what actually matters when everything else gets stripped away. Christy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jordan. Excited to be here.
Let's start with Alexander. For someone hearing your story for the first time, who is Alexander? What is he like just as a kid?
So, Alexander is our son. He is absolutely incredible. He is 7 years old, and he is, as Matt put it, my husband, the poster child for the unfairness of childhood cancer, because he is pure light, happiness, and excited to do everything. A kid that gives his toys away because he has greater perspective and, I don't know, is somewhat of an old soul.
That's
And the
terrific.
best little brother to his sister Charlotte, also, I will say. She
How old
woke
is
up
he?
with a headache, and he's 7.
Okay.
Woke up with a headache today, and he takes his favorite stuffy and puts it by her head and says, "Feel better, sissy." And that's just emblematic of what Alexander is, who he is.
That's sweet. When you first heard the words, and I'm going to mispronounce this possibly, medulloblastoma, group 3, MYC amplified, did you understand what any of that meant?
So I guess we'll go back to June 3rd, 2023, and we were on vacation in Florida. My best friend and I had married brothers back years ago, and so the girls are a year apart in age, and the boys are only 4 months apart. So my in-laws, my parents, everyone was in the panhandle of Florida, and Alexander exhibited just a few symptoms and was diagnosed with strep throat. But after 48 hours, he still was having symptoms of vomiting. And I thought, okay, after 48 hours, he's not contagious. This doesn't make sense. So we need to take him back. And we said to the ER physician, please, will you do a CT scan? And he said, well, there's nothing to indicate, justify doing a CT scan. And so that's, whatever we have to pay, I want to do it. And I will never forget him, walking into the room. There was a nurse by his side, so you could feel it, the tension in the air that there was bad news coming. And he said that Alexander had a 4.2 centimeter tumor. So that was
Mm.
kind of the first step. And I think what most people, and we don't want anybody to realize, we never want people to feel the way we felt, is how long it took to actually get to the specifics of what you were referring to. So to know that it was medulloblastoma, to know that it was, group 3 MYC amplified with metastatic disease in the spine, took actually weeks to get all of that information through pathology reports. The crazy part for us was we were trying to get a medic jet out of pocket. Let's just get home to Chicago so that we can always be in our home and figure this out. We were denied transfer, rejected actually by one of the hospitals in Chicago. It
Wow.
broke our heart. We're like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? And it was, a lot of my Medtronic family that helped us get to a facility in Atlanta. A couple steps later to allow him to have navigation for his tumor resection. But again, it was still a couple of weeks before we really got all of those descriptors are kind of some of the worst that you can get. And to answer your question, we had no idea what those things meant as we learned them. Um, but it took a long time to get the answers back. It's not the fastest process, and um, it was once we got each of those one at a time, it was just punch in the gut, time after time after time.
How quickly did life go from normal to completely different? If you had a timeline, or was this a period of months, of weeks? What did that look like?
A millisecond, and you go from being on a dream family vacation to the hospital, never having put on swimsuits, and you hear a tumor in your child's brain, and he was 4 at the time.
Mm,
And what we didn't know at that time, but what we learned later, is that he was in this gray area for whether we were to start with chemo only or whether we would have to start with radiation. Furthermore, what we learned as medulloblastoma group 3 MYC amplified metastatic disease is that not only would we need to start with radiation at the highest level that he would ever have to ever be able to have in his life, he'll never be able to have radiation again, to also having simultaneous chemotherapy,
mm.
and later 6 more months of high dose chemo. But to answer the question, a millisecond, it was instantaneous that everything changed, and we just had to figure out. Unfortunately for us, we're in the healthcare space, so we were able to navigate it. But even then, it's like you're frozen. What do you do next? Just complete shock.
Yeah. I think there was a moment when you were told that he actually had very little time to live, and then later learned or were told that that wasn't accurate. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually, he had finished up all of his standard course of treatment. His counts were back up in March of 2024, and it was actually on Mother's Day, and there had been an emergent scan done, and actually in the emergency room, we were told, and Matt wasn't actually with me. My mother-in-law was with me, so he was on speakerphone when we got the news that he had 6 to 8 weeks to live.
Mm.
And I screenshotted it for one reason or another, that on Mother's Day it says end of life education in my chart.
Mm.
And we met with palliative care, started talking to friends about, planning a funeral that had done such a thing, about the family, booked tickets to fly to Chicago to more or less say goodbye. And we're looking at this little kid who seems perfect, other than his little bald head, thinking, how in the world is this possible? And I told my mother-in-law, we're very close. I said to her on the next day, I said, I dreamt on Mother's Day that it was a mistake, because not that I predict the future, what
Mm.
mother wouldn't, what mama wouldn't dream that on Mother's Day? And 3 days later, we got the call, because they needed to tell us immediately, couldn't even do it in person because they couldn't waste time, that it was a mistake.
Huh.
And there were things that could have been done differently, and I think there's no time for anything legal. That's like, we have to be positive and move things forward for these kids, and we want great people to be great doctors, and we don't want to move backwards. So yeah, that was a day. So
How old
yeah,
was he when you were informed of that? That
so
he
he was 5.
he was 5. Okay.
He was 5, and like I said, he just seemed perfect. We would do popcorn movie nights those 3 days, in the hospital. He gave me and Grammy our Mother's Day gifts that he'd made, little hands that he'd made out of pottery. Um, and yeah, you just can't believe this is happening to you after, and so soon after doing all the treatment. It just didn't make any sense.
You know, you've operated at the highest levels of medical device, been in executive boardrooms, met with very high level physicians. You lead sales teams, you manage managers, you've done a lot in your medical device career. Is there something that you have learned or understood about healthcare once you became a patient's mom that you could share with us?
I think for so much of the healthcare system, it can be messy. It can be hard to navigate. It can be slow. And I think, furthermore, for children, it's even harder because there are fewer of them experiencing these sometimes rare diseases, and that having the fortitude and the knowledge to navigate the system as best we can. But the things that I learned specifically about childhood cancer research and clinical trials is there's no repository. There's no place you go that's easy to find them. I remember finding the clinical trial that he just finished. He was the fifth child to finish it. He took over 12,000 pills over 2 years. And I found it Googling one night. And, there are certain, resources and Facebook groups where families are, and we try to help each other. But that's some of the best places to go to find that information because the hospitals oftentimes aren't communicating. And so, this one hospital might have a clinical trial, and we actually needed to travel all the way to St. Louis, even though we live in Chicago, for him to have this clinical trial. And fortunately, we have the means to be able to do that, and we have the wherewithal to figure it out that so many people might not.
One of the things that I've learned just doing some research around your story and Alexander's story is less than 5% of cancer funding goes to pediatric cancer. Why is that?
That's a tough one. You
It just
know,
seems it just seems on the surface like that would be the one where a lot of funding would go toward, just gets at people's hearts and
yeah,
um, it's the future and children. It just seems really surprising to me.
it is. It's surprising and heart wrenching and something that I had no concept of whatsoever. Even though I grew up in Tennessee, I remember doing fundraisers for Ronald McDonald House in St. Jude that's located in Memphis. And the bottom line is that unfortunately, the market size and the potential isn't there to invest the dollars for some of these companies to really be able to make the money that they need. And so it comes even to families that have the bandwidth or again the wherewithal to raise that money and to make sure that it's going directly to childhood cancer research. And even if you donate to a children's hospital, it may not end up unless you're designating specifically
Hmm.
what lab you need the money to go to. It may not go there, even though you think it's going to go there. And so I think it's part of the reason that we decided not to create our own nonprofit. Alexander Strong is actually my blog. It was my journal from day one. And we just didn't see the need to add, and not to critique any foundation that's out there whatsoever. This just was our decision in our heart, is that we wanted those funds to go directly to the labs and, eliminate the need for additional infrastructure and overhead, etc. So that's kind of, yeah, that 5%. That's a pretty tough number to hear.
Yeah, it's really surprising. And then your comment about the fact that even if you give to a children's hospital, you have to designate the gift, or it may not end up where you intended it to go. Is there anything else that would genuinely shock people about how underfunded this space really is? Anything else you've discovered along the way that you're like, more people should know about that?
Yeah, I think it's what I've learned is really more so one of my leaders that I still look up to and consider a friend. She said, Christy Brown, your superpower is connection. And this was years ago. And I think that is, um, I think it is. I think I believe that now. And it is that power of connection that is so important to these families. Connecting them with the clinical trials, connecting them with the labs that are doing the research that could save their particular child from their specific disease. But also connecting these kids with experiences. It's been something that I have been passionate about too, because I believe they deserve all the joy. And, you know, there are countries out there that don't have access to proton therapy. And how can they, get to the US or to a country that has that? There are all these things. And then the travel expenses, it's really overwhelming, to think about all of the pieces that by above and beyond the funding that's lacking for research. And I told Senator Duckworth when we had an interview, and I don't know where this quote came from out of my brain. I'm not usually, Matt's the one with the great quotes, and he's the articulate one. He's the attorney. But I said to her, just from my heart, I said, childhood cancer research and funding is not a charity. It is a moral obligation. And I really believe that, because these kids, they can't fight for themselves.
That's a great quote. Shifting it a little bit, our conversation here. I mean, you lead and have led top performing sales teams in President's Club, laying out national strategies, managing ultra performers, driving new initiatives at a major corporation. I mean, you're not surviving in your career, you're thriving in your career. How do you continue to show up at that level with supporting Alexander in his battle at home?
Well, I'm fortunate to have a wonderful partner, a best dad, and Matt, who at the time, through a variety of reasons, was staying at home. And so that was helpful. And for me, some people have said to me, I would be crawling under my bed. For me, I need the work and the people that I work alongside. And Jordan, you wouldn't believe it, but the team, during the time that Alexander was diagnosed, my immediate team, we fought through 4 different immediate family members diagnosed with cancer, and 2 of which passed away.
Wow.
Within about a year of Alexander's diagnosis. And one of them passed away just 2 weeks after his daughter was born. And in these stories, you just can't imagine. And so I think leaning in to that and being with those people that were just really excellent, but also we became so close. I mean, say like a family. Some leaders don't like to talk about work and family, but when you go through those things, a family forms. And while I'm in a different role now, I still stay in touch with all of them. And it's something I wish no leader would ever have to go through. People ask, how would you, explain, or, I don't want anybody to feel what we have felt. And so it's hard sometimes, you want people to understand, but you don't want them to understand.
Is there anything that used to feel like major pressure that just doesn't feel like that anymore, or doesn't matter anymore in your role?
Gosh, I don't know that I would say it doesn't matter. I think I feel more freedom to make the decisions that I need to make. And I love being in the field. I love being with the people that I work with. But it's okay sometimes for me to say, not now, or not this week, but let's make it happen. I think I think I've always had pretty good perspective and empathy, but I think just even more so, it's like, the end of the fiscal quarters and the fiscal years and the hustle and bustle. It's, there's still a high sense of urgency for me to get things done, but it's also maybe sometimes it doesn't happen, and we'll get it done the next quarter, because the next quarter is the most important quarter, right?
It is always the most important quarter in company history.
Right. Exactly.
It has never changed, and started when I got there in '98. And by the time I left in 2012, it was always the same most important quarter in company history.
Yeah. Friday was the end of our fiscal year. So yesterday was the most important day, and I was on it. So
that's great. You're used to driving outcomes. Obviously, you're in sales. It's a performance business. And yet here you've got a situation you're facing that you can control some things, you can't control other things. How do you live in that tension? Because in your work, your professional life, you do have a stronger sense of controlling outcomes. But here it's much different. How does that work?
I think that's part of why I've continued to lean into work because it helps to feel that there is some control somewhere. And we don't have total control in our roles, right? But more so than what we've faced with Alexander. And I think it's interesting you asked that question because Matt and I, for years, talk about, oh, we want to do a TEDx talk on control equals happiness. Just thinking about little things like if you have control of your house and it's tidy, you feel happier when it's tidy and you're in control. But now they're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to shift that. If we ever do this TEDx talk, because control is a complete illusion. Because one day, you have phenomenal career, phenomenal family. You're on vacation in this gorgeous, you know, house in the panhandle of Florida, and 2 seconds later, your son has aggressive high-risk brain cancer.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely no reason. I've had every question. Why did this happen? Is this part of, family genetics? There's nothing. There's absolutely no reason at all. They did all the genetic testing at St. Jude. And maybe one day we'll know, but right now there is no reason.
When did this shift from this is our fight to we need to do something bigger?
Week one, I think, and Matt and I are yin and yang. We are such a team, but we bring different strengths. And he is my supporter. I've been in sales and I, am not afraid to put myself out there. But we talked week one because this was so foreign to us. We knew no family whatsoever facing childhood cancer. Now we're surrounded by families. We looked at each other and we talked through it and we thought about the pros and cons of being social and being out there. And boy, there have been some pretty crazy cons along the way. But
Mm.
overall, the families that we have been able to, help and guide and navigate, just support, provide experiences for, has outweighed the I don't know, a few crazies out there, like, try to steal Alexander's t-shirt design and start selling it or whatnot. A lot of scammers out there these days, unfortunately, but it's so
That's sad.
interesting.
That
It is.
there would be
It,
scammers of childhood cancer and childhood diseases out there. That's just sad, sad
yeah,
commentary. Um,
yes. Someone actually started selling Alexander shirts for profit versus being, yeah. So we got in front of that. We handled that. But I think it's been interesting to me, especially, this overlap that some people are very uncomfortable with between work and personal. And for me, my true belief is there's they can't be separated. And that's actually been the platform through Facebook, but especially through LinkedIn, where people have said, "Oh my gosh, do you know this family?" Or, "Oh my gosh, there's this mom who was in this space where we were sharing Alexander's story and thinking this would never be her life because why would you ever?" And 2 years later, her son is diagnosed. And from small to large impact, we have been able to help people. And even right now, I got a random Facebook message just about a week or two ago. I don't know. They searched up Alexander, and we've done a lot of work fighting for kids in DC, just kind of on our own and with other groups. And he has an opportunity for some kids to be a part of something really special. Um, a cool TV show related, that part of it is related to childhood cancer awareness. And so it's been fun to, again, help just connect those people. I find the people and then connect them with my friend and say, hey, you'll get all the details. And they probably think I'm a scammer because they're getting random Facebook messages from me. But just again, trying to find families, the kids, the siblings, especially the siblings go through so much. Charlotte's 10th birthday was in the Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. And so we made up for that. But it's so hard for the siblings and giving the parents a smile to watch their kids be a part of something unique.
yeah. I mean, what is Alexander Strong and what is it trying to change? If someone's listening and wants to help, what actually moves the needle?
So Alexander Strong, again, is his tagline is hashtag. He's not Alex, he's Alexander, and he will let you know that. And he it's again, I mentioned this earlier. It's the blog. We need to update it, but it's the blog from day one. You go down to June 4th, and my friend said you need to start journaling, and it really did help. And I'm so glad that I have all of that, documented to kind of hold dear. But I think about the top priorities. One, getting funding to the places that have the most promising research that is the furthest along that can impact the most kids. I think that's number one. Funding, we need it. I hate to say, well, let's ask for donations, but we need it. Awareness, because we were completely ignorant of childhood cancer. Awareness is very key. And I think advocacy, and, I think about advocacy as one that's really hard for some families, depending on where the families are and, what their knowledge base is. And I think of a nonprofit that I'm heavily involved with, and I think about these moms that struggle in Chicago, and they're single moms, and you know and the reason I'm still engaged, still on the board of directors there, is I told Matt, what if one of those moms was facing a child with cancer? What resources, what guidance, what finances would they have to try to save their baby? So I think the money is important. The awareness that then sometimes helps with raising the money, but then the advocacy and advocating, for me, helping others to advocate for themselves and for their children that may not know how to navigate.
Mhm. What do you think you see clearly now that the majority of us are sort of completely missing based on your experiences?
Oh gosh, I don't know that everyone's missing it. I think a lot of people try to know and live in the moment.
Mhm.
Um, it is hard to see Alexander go to school. I just want to sit and snuggle him and hug him like a teddy bear, but he's not a teddy bear, and he has to be with his friends because his friends are his favorite thing. He loves school, he loves to learn, he loves Legos and Super Mario, Pokemon. Oh, Pokemon. Um, and so, but every moment is to be cherished. And I think that is just at the forefront more than ever. And I do think a lot of people keep that in mind. Um, but also with keeping normalcy and keeping him unafraid and as unaware as he can be. And, he's got this crazy spiky hair from all of his treatments that he doesn't want me to cut. I'm like, you know what? You were bald for a long time. I am not going to cut this hair. It's your hair, but it's emblematic of his personality that's just radiating. It's like an electric Pokemon, I tell him. And, he's lost a lot of his hearing in his left ear, especially. The hearing aids can't even compensate for it, but he can't get a cochlear implant, but it doesn't faze him. And then he just had to get glasses again, and now has started growth hormones, so shot every day. But the kid is, I mean, you've probably seen some videos and different things like that is Alexander to a T, and none of it, and just rolls with it. Just says, okay, I'm going to put my hearing aids and my glasses on my bedside table, and I'm just going to do it. And that's all he knows. So, and I think we have to show up, Matt, I have to show up positively about any of these hurdles, and like, those glasses look awesome on you, and he reflects that, so we have to stay strong for him. It isn't always easy. Yeah, it's not easy a lot of the time.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's not, but a lot of powerful lessons you're sharing here on this, on our little talk we're having here. If there was a way for any executive or leader or high performer listening to us now that could feel what you felt just for 24 hours, what do you think would change in the way they live and work?
Um, well, first, I don't want anybody to feel it.
I understand that. Yeah.
I don't want anybody to feel it, even for a moment.
Mhm.
But I think it just strengthens the priorities. I think for those that are in healthcare, it strengthens the mission that is about the patient. And um, it's the irony is that Alexander was born on our founder's birthday, actually, but um, it is about the patient, and we have to keep that at the forefront. And that can get sometimes lost in the day to day. I think, you know, balancing empathy with what needs to get done at work, because work still has to get done, but we are all people. And the minute that you face something like this, it just becomes ever so clear um, that we need to lead with empathy and understanding, and um, just keep focused on the patients, because they're so important.
Yeah. Well, Christy, thank you, not just for your time, but for your honesty, for letting people into something this personal. I think this is one of those conversations that resets us when we hear it, what matters and what doesn't, what we think is pressure versus what actually is pressure. And for everyone listening, don't let this be something you hear and move on. I would encourage you to go learn about Alexander, go support Alexander Strong, and do something with it, because this is bigger than a podcast. Christy, my wife, my kids, we're with you on this fight, and we're going to be supporting Alexander Strong. And to everyone listening, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity to raise awareness for all those families, and just really grateful. And we've become, I feel like, friends over the past few years, and I'm grateful for everything you do. It really means a lot.
Yeah. Great having you on. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.